Hello, all. It's Vanessa Love. So, I'm a counselor and art therapist in Connecticut. So, I am very passionate about art therapy. I used to consume everything about art therapy up until I got out of grad school, and then I just went into private practice, and I had to learn marketing and all of these other things, and how to run a private practice, which is like completely different from facility work. So yeah, that was quite a change. So anyway, I think one of the biggest disappointments from like academia to practice is that like there's so much difference in between the way that you learn about art therapy and the way it's actually practiced. I know that like when I first became like an intern and everything, I was like, oh, I just wish I knew like, what directives to use and, how to see these things because, like you're learning and you want to know almost everything, like right when you get there, because you're so excited and you're like a sponge and you want to like, just everything, you know, um, and and then you get to practice and it's really intimidating and it's crazy and you're like I just but then you get into it, you learn it, you like this is normal, you know um so I have a book that I reread. It was called Spirituality and Art Therapy. I know there's two books like that with like very similar names, but I'm like, no, I'm sure mine is the one that I have is Spirituality and Art Therapy. I can't remember what the other one is called actually. But it's like a group collaboration one. And so like I reread that and some of like the stuff that they were talking about just never really applied to art therapy practice in everyday language. Like, I don't work with cancer patients. It's nothing that I'm like, oh, I just don't work with them. Like, no, I mean, other people work in facilities that cater to people who have and are recovering from cancer and chemo and those type of things. I didn't have that training, not particularly like, like in that community. So, just I don't think I've had people who have actively had cancer or chemo, but I've had like obviously people who have recovered from cancer in my practice. So like, they would talk about like meditations and artwork that came out of, like the person suffering so much and all of this stuff. And it was like, oh, cool. And then there was like another one in there that was about going off to Ireland for like a weekend workshop. And actually, I think it was like a whole week. It was a week retreat. And, they got to like just do their thing and got into their artwork. And of course, this is an art therapist. So now she's writing about her experiences because, as an art therapist, you can't just, have an experience. You have to write about it too. And a lot of people aren't great at writing articles, but because of their connections, they get published. Um, so, like it was all of this, like just stuff that I'm like, I'm not going to go on a week retreat with my clients and only do art therapy regularly. Like, I mean, that would be great if I could do it at least twice in my professional career, but like, that's not something that I have done in the last 7 years. I mean, I think it's great if you talk about everyday spirituality, and not like big spiritual growth and breakthroughs and all of that stuff. Like that's not what I do. That's really not what I do. And I also have people who are who are atheists in my in that chair, talking about like like non-spiritual stuff, just politics, science, like things that they're interested in. Because they totally have the right to, kind of direct that as a part of their, treatment. So like there's all of these like preconceived notions. And I think the other one is that you can totally get people together for, a group activity. Oh my God, not outside of an agency. No, not at all. Not that like it's completely impossible, but like it really is a lot more difficult if it's not a part of their day, if it's not a part of their programming, if it's not a part of their treatment plan already. trying to get people in. I've done one group of divorced men since I've been a therapist. And like, even that, one of the group members, there were 3 to begin with, one of the group members dropped out. So I had a 2-person group, which was fine, because they said that they really enjoyed it, that it was very helpful for them. But like, that other person, like it's unfortunate that he dropped out, and so like that is my experience. Like I did 5 weeks, so short term, like thing. First week is rules. That's what you do when you're a group therapist, and then you have to like continue to do all these things. It's really, really tough. So like I think that there was kind of this like disappointment of like, oh, this is what I thought that I would be doing, and this is what I actually ended up doing, which I mean is, for me, is very fulfilling when I get to do it. But in the last year, I've gotten away from the art therapy and like art therapy, like art therapist title. I just, just kind of like, it's not, and like 90% of what I do is actually talk therapy. It is not art therapy. So yeah, I just kind of like dismissed it. And now I'm like coming back around to it, and I'm like, yeah, so I am an art therapist. I'm pretty much the only art therapist in private practice in Stanford. And like I only deal with anxiety, trauma, depression, and people who were adopted as kids. That like, not only, but like, that's the majority of the cases who I see. Yeah, so like it's very different. And I was just talking with someone today about like, they were saying facility work and private practice are pretty much the same thing. And I'm like, oh God, no, they're not. Like, I want to do a whole essay on how like facility work is so different from private practice. Like, private practice, you're by yourself. Like, there's no other therapists. Like like the office next door is a guy who teaches real estate. Like the guy, he's the same guy on this side too. So like, my neighbor after a year of being in this office is a real estate teacher. So like there are other therapists in this building who I can talk to, but like I don't see them because they're in their offices and have their own schedules. I might run into them in the parking lot. I might run into them in the hallway if they're down this way. But like most of them are like, there's like 2 areas. So there's like one way over here and there's one over here. So like we're not around each other at all. Like we're not getting together to collaborate, like we're not. So that's one big difference. As I was saying, the programming and like treatment plans and that sort of thing, like you can offer a lot in a facility and it's not necessarily the same in private practice. And one of the major things, and you can't get people easily to come to groups because they have life. They can't always, like, their schedules don't always match up if you do want to start a group. And one of the major differences is severity of symptoms. Working with the veterans, chronically ill. I remember misdiagnosing my first patient, my first client in private practice, because I had only seen psychosis as like this, like very, very like symptomatic, not functioning, or like kind of functioning in society, like chronically ill, like person. And like this person, like they were experiencing psychosis. And I was like, I don't want to say that they have that, because like it just didn't become apparent to me until like they were leaving therapy. And I was like, oh, I should have totally, why did I do it this way? I thought that I was doing it the right way. I was doing it not the right way. And there were a lot of missteps like that along the way, early on in private practice, like just really figuring it out. And it was just different. Also, like when you're in private practice, you have to kind of budget for how much you're going to spend on projects, on art supplies, on like, yeah, projects and art supplies and things like that, and other little things in your office. When you work at a facility, all of that is included in the budget. So you just can ask for that money if you need it. Not saying that they're just like, here's $500, go free. Like, you may be working within like, $100 or something, like a year, a month, depending on the facility, what they do and all of that stuff. So yeah, that's very, very different. Yeah. And like, oh my gosh. I mean, for me, that's not a disappointment, but like, I know early on when I was like really trying to be the best that I could be and like be knowledgeable and everything, I felt like a total imposter. And like that I just kept on messing up. But like, yeah, as I said, I think the biggest disappointment is that what you learn in school is not entirely what you can like apply to practice, because they're talking about like, okay, so we all got together and did this thing and it's wonderful. And like, yeah, but like, they don't talk about like, okay, here's this person in front of you, and this is what you should be learning in internship, is what they keep saying. Like, here's what you can be doing in your internship, as a way of doing, these are the options that you have in this situation. So yeah, that like, yeah, it's so different theory and reading about people's experiences and then actually doing it yourself. And you have to kind of eventually not like dig into a personality as far as you're going to go, but like just kind of figure out who you are and what your strengths are and what interests you most. And that's going to be different. As I was saying, like, I don't work with cancer patients, but like some of my other like colleagues do. And, like that's all that they do every day. Some of them volunteer, and that's what they'll do. They'll, volunteer at a cancer center. Awesome. That's wonderful. But like, it's all very, very different. Well, I hope that was helpful. And as I was saying, I am the only art therapist in private practice in Stanford. If you know anyone who might be interested in therapy in Stanford, just remember me. Hopefully you don't need it, but maybe one day you will. All right. Thanks so much. It's Vanessa Love.